Hello everybody, it's me SpriteVR, and today I'm going to be talking about video games that I really think should get a VR version. And I'm not going to be alone in this video. I'm going to have a ton of other content creators in this video, so make sure you stick around for them. We're all going to talk about our favorite video game that we would love to see in VR. I'm talking about games that have no plans for a VR version or don't currently have one, or VR games that really should get a sequel or a remake perchance. And I believe one of those games that fit that criteria would probably have to be The Last of Us. This really clicked for me when I saw PlayStation do their little tech demo they did for their little LED screen thing, their little immersive experience for The Last of Us. And let me just say, this is what really clicked and made me start thinking about a VR port for this game. Because the immersive experience looked really cool, and all I could really think about was, imagine this in VR. And this was even further engraved into my little crondolium when I played the Last of Us mod for Blade and Sorcery, which gave you Joel, Ellie, and Abby plus multiple infected. It made me realize how good a Last of Us VR game would be. Now, you could say this mainly for most PlayStation exclusives, but I think the Last of Us would work really well in VR. Because could you imagine it being in first person? You're trying to hide from clickers and be quiet, or trying to run away from a group of stalkers. I'm just saying, that would be absolutely terrifying. Imagine having to fight a bloater in VR. That'd be kind of scary. I'm just saying, I genuinely think a Last of Us VR port would go insanely hard, because The Last of Us has always been in the realm of almost scary, but more on the story side. In VR, I think that would take a horror element way up there, because I think not being able to look over cover unless you physically peer over would add an entire new layer to the stealth. Plus, a really cool feature would be having the infected be able to hear you through your microphone, so you have to be quiet or cover your mouth, etc. I think those kind of features would be great. Now, you could argue the case that The Walking Dead is sort of like The Last of Us in VR, but I'd like to think that those are two different sort of games. One's more focused on the survival aspect, while the other one is more focused on the story and sort of horror, but mainly story. And I think The Last of Us would be a great AAA story zombie game in VR. If they pull off the gunplay, if they pull off the melee system really well, and I know that the melee system is possible because we have multiple games that prove it works great, like Blade and Sorcery. Even Walking Dead Onslaught has some pretty good gore, even though that game was pretty much trash. I genuinely think The Last of Us core formula would work insanely well in VR. And if they find a way to transfer that into VR, oh my god, it would be one of the greatest games on the platform. I think Naughty Dog can pull it off. Naughty Dog does some weird shit sometimes, especially with that PlayStation experience. And could you imagine The Last of Us getting a VR port on the PSVR 2 with eye tracking and all that stuff? Dude, it would be insane. I genuinely think The Last of Us can be pulled off in VR. I don't see why it can't. I think it would be a perfect fit. It would definitely break the mold of the traditional VR zombie games we have right now, and would truly be a VR zombie game to the next level. So honestly, that's my pick. I think The Last of Us could work amazing in VR. And if it does, I will actually explode. Anyways, that's about it for my time. Let's cut to the content creators and see how they feel.
Hello. Let me get rid of this equipment so I can talk. My name is Variety, and I usually stream over on Twitch, so this is completely different compared to what I do. I decided to join in on this question about what games could work in VR. Well, for me, it's Risk of Rain 2, because that's like one of my favorite games. But hey, what is Risk of Rain 2? Well, it's basically like any other roguelike shooter game. Name like, I don't know, Enter the Gungeon, Binding of Isaac. It's a roguelike shooter fighting game with way too many characters, a lot of items, and way too much. And yes, it has modding support. That kind of gets me to also a different part. There was a VR mod. However, It lost support. I'm hoping that either people can fix the already existing mod, which is actually pretty good what I've seen on videos, or they make their own stuff. But I feel like it could be played in a very unique way compared to the normal game. Because normally it's just... You get my point. Normally that's the case. But in VR, how are you gonna do it then? Are you gonna like slash with like your sword? Are you gonna pull back a bow? Gonna do, I don't know, shoot a gun properly, reload properly? I don't know. And how are mod creators gonna deal with it? That's all questions. But if they can figure it out, it's gonna be like really good. You know, 6 minutes was actually kind of a big amount of time now I'm thinking about it. Whatever. I did my part. I don't know, you guys can go on. I have no clue otherwise.
What up, peeps? My name is Space Goat, and when I saw Sprite asking which games need to be in VR, my mind instantly went to Zelda. I've covered a ton of Zelda VR content on my channel, from straight up emulators being played in VR to complete remakes in engines like Unreal and Unity. And every time I play, I can't help but think, wow, Nintendo's really sleeping on VR so hard. So let me give you a quick overview as to why I think Zelda formula would be perfect for VR. So first off, exploration of environments is one of VR's biggest strengths, I feel. And Zelda worlds are practically begging to be explored in such a manner. Like leaving the cave in Breath of the Wild world in VR chat is 100 times more jaw-dropping in VR than it was for me on the Switch, and it was already pretty epic to begin with. The stylized art direction would also play very well in VR versus something more realistic. Zelda games also tend to have a lot more environmental interactivity, especially through the use of its iconic items like bombs, bows, and the hookshot. It's nice to break up all the action with puzzles, which could make great use of the hands-on VR interactions. And speaking of action, Zelda's classic sword and board style gameplay would be perfect fit for VR. It doesn't need to be as in-depth physics-wise as say Blade and Sorcery, although that would be cool. But blocking with your shield and parrying an attack with your sword, leaving the enemy open for you to slice in half would be so satisfying. I mean, look at Skyward Sword. Nintendo already experimented with using motion controls versus traditional button presses, so they're pretty much halfway there already. VR is all about immersion, and taking all of those aspects and bundling them up into one game would make you feel like the hero of time, making Link's journey feel all that more epic and personal. I mean, they make Link mostly a mute for the very reason that they want you to implant yourself as the main character in the story, so what better way to do that than to carry out his motions in VR? Anyway, I don't want to go too in-depth since this isn't a deep dive. Space Goat out. Peace.
Greetings, citizen. We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this important message. This is Loopy with everything you need to know. Okay, I'm not doing the bit anymore. I shouldn't need to explain what Helldivers 2 is to you, but if you don't know, imagine if Michael Bay took Terminator, Starship Troopers, and Mass Effect and packed it all into a singular 4-player co-op shooter. It's as amazing as it sounds. Helldivers 2 is my favorite video game of all time.
Loopy, I was about to fire a bunch of grenades into there, but okay, that works.
My name's not Google. Oh my god! My baby thumper.
Absolutely cook it.
Oh
Turn it
shit!
into nothing.
Oh!
Oh, Loopy's.
Get in! Get in! Get in! My plan worked! My plan worked! I pushed you over with the door, you're welcome. I'm really good at the game, I promise. But do you know what would make the game 1,000 times better? The power of virtual reality! Let me explain. Helldivers is already an amazing game to play with your friends, but imagine being on the actual planets, fighting actual bugs and bots and squids, and shooting your friends in the face after they steal your own sample capsule. It would be absolutely fantastic.
Was quite
Loopy,
explosive.
Loop, I see somebody who's gonna need a stim.
You. We already have 2 Helldivers VR games out right now. We have Starship Troopers Continuum and whatever the hell that second one was that literally no one plays or even remembers. Both of them are dog shit, but an official Helldivers 2 VR game would absolutely be fantastic. Or even a mod. I would be okay with a mod. It would set my PC on fire, but I would be completely okay with that because it's Helldivers 2 VR. So yeah, my pick for a VR game that absolutely needs to happen is Helldivers VR. The first game was pretty alright, the second game is my favorite video game of all time, and if it was in VR, that would just be chef's kiss. Thank you, Sprite, for letting me have a segment in this video. This is Gloopy, signing off.
The site is experiencing multiple Keter and Euclid level containment breaches. Full site lockdown initiated.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Hold on, this is not my channel. Where am I? My name is Mesky and welcome to me answering this question. For the question, I have the answer that I want SCP in VR. Now, yeah, we have plenty of that stuff with SCP Lab Rats, blah blah blah. But hey, Lab Rats, while a really great from the ground up version, it's just lackluster in some parts, you know? You play it once and it's just no longer scary, you know everything that can happen. But that's why I want to suggest SCP Containment Breach Director's Cut. Ooh, what is SCP Containment Breach Director's Cut? That is a good question. SCP Containment Breach Director's Cut is basically just a very hard mode of the regular Containment Breach, with a bunch of new events and stuff. Say like in the very start of the game. Normally you only encounter SCP-173, 106 and maybe 049 every now and then. But here you also have new stuff like 096 within the very start. Played a little clip from one of my older streams. Oh, hello. Like I mentioned, we do have SCP Lab Rat, but I think it can be done better. Bigger, stronger, harder, faster. Wait, no, that's Daft Punk. But say, imagine, here you are, just a lone D-class. You're walking around in Site 19. Suddenly, you hear concrete behind you. You turn around. What's there? It's not a statue. It's just your imagination. Until suddenly you look back and behold! SCP-096 has escaped containment and is right in front of you. And yeah, basically stuff like that. Say like, usually in Containment Breach you have designated rooms for object SCPs and stuff. Like how 018 is in containment, 714. You know, but imagine you can find them on corpses of researchers that are just randomly there. You can enter little testing chambers where SCPs are getting experimented on. So say stuff like that. Either way, that's it for my ideas. Again, my name is Mesky. If you like this for some reason, then make sure to go check me out over here. And I'll see y'all later. Bye bye.
Elden Ring. No explanation. Bye.
I want you to imagine something. Outlast.
Little
Yes, that Outlast. In VR.
Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
I know, right? Who in their right mind would want that? If there's one PC game that I would like to port over to VR, somehow, it would be Outlast. I feel like the intro where you drive up to the asylum and being able to look out your window and see the asylum and realize how absolutely fucked you are would be a crazy experience in VR. Watching your character turn off his car knowing that you can't go back. Walking up to the tower and building, watching people walk through the windows, something is definitely wrong, and you have no idea what it is.
Little pig. can't hide!
Multiple officers down in sub-basement. Unknown assailant. We need evac and paramedics.
You paying attention? Don't pass that on me. There's still a lot for you to absorb.
You were here, weren't you, little pig?
Yeah, I just think it'd be kind of cool. The closest thing you can get right now is Gmod with the VR mod, but I mean, it's Gmod. I just think it'd be really, really cool. Like, if Outlast was one of the first things I thought of when I was introduced to UE VR, but that's not on the right version of Unreal Engine. It's too outdated, unfortunately, so we can't really do that. The only option at this point is an official port to VR, and I think that would really be amazing, because Red Barrels knows what horror is, and they know how to make a game scary, and I feel like a VR game, that would allow them to take it to the next level, you know? I think that it would be really cool, but that's basically everything that I have to say. Thank you for listening, and go play Outlast if you haven't.
Very few franchises have left a mark on gaming like Metal Gear. Whether it be stealth, politics, betrayal, or philosophy, it wasn't just about sneaking around in those games. The games told stories that made you think, and they made you feel. Now imagine experiencing that world, not through a controller, through your own eyes. The Outer Heaven and Zanzibar Land missions, the earliest chapters in Solid Snake's story, could be reimagined in VR, and it would be incredible. Here's what I think it could actually look like. We'd start in 1995. You play as Solid Snake, a fresh addition to the Foxhound unit. Big Boss, your commander, has sent you into Outer Heaven to stop a new weapon, a bipedal tank called Metal Gear. But as you push deeper into the facility, something feels off. Eventually, you find out the truth. Big Boss was the enemy all along, and he sent you in expecting you to fail. 4 years later, Snake is called back for another mission, this time to Zanzibar Land. Another Metal Gear, another nuclear threat, and again, Big Boss is at the center of it. These two missions define Snake's journey, and they deserve to be experienced in a new, immersive way. Stealth in VR would be next level. You're not just pressing a crouch button, you're actually ducking behind cover. You peek around corners with your own head, you listen, you wait, and you move with purpose. Inventory could be fully physical. You reach down to grab a grenade, open a pouch for rations, tap your ear to answer a codec call from HQ. All the classic gear will be here. Cardboard boxes, night vision, cameras, C4. Except now, you're actually placing it, handling it. CQC has the potential to be intuitive. You sneak up, you grab a card, and pull them into the shadows. And distractions? You knock on walls with your knuckles, or toss an empty magazine to lure someone away. Everything Snake did in the classic games, you're doing with your own hands now. And the boss fights, they'd be incredible. In Outer Heaven, you go up against the TX-55 Metal Gear, planting explosives while dodging turrets and lasers. Then in Zanzibar Land, you'd face Gray Fox. He used to be your friend and ally, but now he's piloting Metal Gear D. The fight escalates into a raw, brutal fist fight in a minefield. No weapons, it's just you and him, and a whole lot of history. And finally, you'd have Big Boss, the final confrontation. It's not just a fight, it's personal. You're battling the man who trained you, betrayed you, still believes he's doing the right thing. The environment's burning, the base is collapsing, and you have to finish it. Now, one of the biggest strengths of Metal Gear has always been the atmosphere, and in VR, it would be dialed up to 11. There would be no cluttered UI, although maybe your health is shown on a watch or a wristband. Codec calls come in through your headset, and gear is pulled straight from your body. You'd hear everything. echoes of footsteps, a guard humming to himself, or even the soft click of a surveillance camera turning your way. Whether you're sneaking through vents, hiding in shadows, or sprinting towards an escape chopper, the world would feel alive, tense, and heavy. Outer Heaven and Zanzibar Land weren't just missions, they were the start of everything. A VR adaptation wouldn't just bring these stories back, it would let us live them. Feel the pressure, the doubt, and the consequences. For fans, it's a chance to go back. For newcomers, it's the perfect introduction. It's not about reimagining the past, it's about stepping into it. One slow, quiet, careful step at a time.
So this submission was a little last minute. Thank you to SpriteVR for including me. Hi, my name is Crash Dude, and I make VR gaming videos. So the question for this video is, what VR games need to happen? And I think I have a really cool game in mind. A VR game from the Mountain Blade series. If you're not familiar with the Mountain Blade series, it's developed and published by Tailworlds Entertainment, and it has two entries people would consider mainline. Warband, released in early 2010, and Bannerlord, released in early 2020 for early access. Now, what are these games about? Well, you begin the game as a weak peasant, with some gold to your name. You're capable of recruiting villagers to join your militia. Once these people have joined you, you can train them in combat and upgrade them with better weapons. That's good and all, but once you do all of that, what can you do? Well, really you can do whatever you want. You can become a bandit, robbing people and killing innocents. Or you could become a vassal of a king, fighting bandits and protecting your kingdom. This game is an RPG, so you're allowed to tailor the world and create a story that you like. You can rise up and become a king yourself, ruling over your own kingdom if you wanted to. The vast world and choices in Mountain Blade games would be so fun to experience in VR, and it wouldn't really be that hard to implement. In the game, you give your troops commands with the F keys, but in VR, you would be able to give commands with gestures. Raise your hand and swing it forward would tell your troops to engage the enemy, and spinning your hand in a circle would order your troops to regroup. It would be quite engaging seeing the large-scale battles in VR. Mountain Blade is separate from other games in the genre, however, because it forces you to control a single character in the battlefield, your character that you create in the intro, so the consequences of failure are immediately felt. If you lose a battle, you get captured by the enemy, and your character is able to bargain for his life or try to escape. The fact you play as a single character lends hand in hand with VR games. So yeah, that's my submission for what game I think should be made in VR. Thanks to SpriteVR for allowing me to participate. Thanks to everyone else for their submissions. Here's my channel again, just in case you want to check out any of my content. See you there.
Okay, so you might be wondering, what's mine? Also, Cookie18TTV, on Twitch. So, here we go! Schedule 1. Now, obviously, you might be wondering what it might look like. This is a hyper-realistic, like, representation. You ready? I don't know if you're able to show this. But, meth. Now hear me out. Meth has a 3D model, and it'll have the whole map in 3D. And then you could go in VR. And then, just, there's meth, cocaine, weed. I'm too lazy to draw all of those, so I'm just gonna say them. And then, the skateboard, of course, how could I forget? Look, skateboard, wheels, that's a skateboard, alright. It kind of looks like a hoverboard. Okay, anyways, meth. So, hear me out. Hear me out. This guy, you can get customized, literally Schedule 1 just in VR, because I don't even have the game, I'm gonna be so honest, but I watched Joe Bartolozzi play it, so I like the game.
Okay, bye.